Hey Han, I'm Chloe and this is the aerial invert tutorial. My mission is to share my passion for pole dancing and make pole dancing easy to learn and accessible. This is the 28th video of the intermediate pole trick tutorial series. In order to maximize your training out of all the videos, I highly recommend you to start from the very first video of this playlist, as the tricks will be a progression of the video before. The aerial invert is such an impressive move and also a crucial part of the intermediate level trick. We will be going through 3 different entries today, both spinning forward and backwards, and also spinning and static as well. Your prerequisite of this move is to be able to do a corkscrew and also your invert from the floor, so make sure that you watch those tutorials before attempting this one. Some of the other supplementary videos are the straddle up and the pancake video as well. This video is mirrored for your ease of learning. I'll have a red wristband on both of my right limbs to indicate the right side of my body if you do get confused of the directions. This trick tutorial is created for you for informational and educational purposes only, and for you to enjoy learning pole dancing from the comfort of your own home. Please participate at your own risk and don't work beyond your capability, and seek help or spotting when necessary. For any health concerns, please make sure to seek professional medical advice. Please make sure you warm up your body before you start this video. I have a warm-up depending on your level under each playlist so that you can try it before you do the trick. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up so that I know to create more of these kinds of videos, and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet so that you are notified every single time I upload a video. If you're looking to further your pole journey in combining tricks and dance together, then consider subscribing to my online learning platform Pole Art Vault, where you'll be learning a dance and combos, learning an entire routine. For more information, you can find the link in the description below. Alrighty, without further ado, let's get into the aerial invert tutorial. Alrighty, now let's get into our conditioning. Now, just before I preface this, I do want to note that I'm not going to be repeating any of the conditioning exercises we did for our inverts, our straddle ups, our pancakes, half straddle tutorials. So if you haven't done those ones before, make sure you check them out because they're going to be very, very beneficial doing any of the straddle holds or also the straddle legs, where you're working on the leg tension, keeping those legs nice and straight in the straddle, etc. Now, these are going to be supplementary to the other tutorials that we've done in the past. So let's try these 2 conditioning exercises. Now, our first one is an ankle grab or an inverted crucifix into a straddle, and then controlling the straddle down to the floor. Now, what this conditioning allows you to do is understand the engagement of a straddle and also practicing the full range of being able to go up and then going all the way down in your straddle. Now, we're gonna come into our ankle grab into a straddle. Or if you can straddle from the floor, you can totally do that as well. Now, if you haven't watched my straddle tutorial before, I would probably highly recommend you to do it from an ankle grab first, because it allows you to get into the correct positioning in your straddle. So, we're coming into our inverted crucifix or in a straddle. Now, once you come into your inverted crucifix, make sure that you slide your leg all the way up. Get the pole in your oblique by pulling your head up towards your knee, dropping it down, opening your chest forward. Now, make sure you keep tucking that tailbone in, engage through your core, looking down to the floor, inside leg down, outside leg down. From there, you're gonna bend your elbow, control it up into a straddle up, then you're gonna bring your leg all the way down to the floor. Oh my goodness, I almost kicked Chetty. Good, well done. So as you can see, I tipped really slowly by controlling my lower ab and making sure that I keep my front chain very tight, then slowly coming down to the floor. Now, the common mistake here is extending the arms. So make sure that you keep your bent elbows nice and bent, and try not to flop out of it. So I'm trying to really maintain that straddle hold until I come into a straddle up position. So for those that don't know what a straddle up is, this is your straddle up. So think about taking about 3 seconds coming down if you can. Remember that you need all the grip with your hands, your obliques, and your legs in that ankle grab position. So remember, grip up your bridge of your foot, back of the ankle, your shin, your inner knees, back of your calf, literally everything from the knee below. So let's try that on the other side. So remember again, if you haven't done my version of your ankle grab or inverted crucifix, please make sure you get the pole into the right spot. So your oblique should be touching the pole and not your rib cage. So the difference is getting into your inverted crucifix. Now you can see that the pole is sitting on my rib cage. If I pull up or open my chest away from the pole and get that pole right into the shelf or your oblique, that's gonna help a lot. Now I'm gonna look down, open the chest, control it down by bending through the elbow and stepping down. Well done. Now again, if you can, think about taking about 3 seconds to control it down. That's gonna help you really work on the correct posture of your inverts firstly, and also practicing the full range of being able to hit your hip all the way up when you get into the aerial invert. Well done. Now, if you struggle to keep your legs straight and drop down for now, please feel free to do a froggy tuck instead of doing the straight legs. However, working on straight legs will definitely help you with conditioning. So try to take the progression as much as you can. However, if you are finding that you're just flopping out of it, start with the regression first, which is your knee bent. So you're going to come into your ankle grab, get the pole right into your shelf first. You're gonna come into your straddle, then bend your knee, and then controlling it out. So there's a second option. So remember, you can always do the froggy tuck first, then see if you can progress into the straight leg inverts. Well done. Our next and final conditioning we'll be doing is an aerial corkscrew. So again, if you haven't watched the corkscrew before, make sure you watch that one because it's gonna be very beneficial to get this conditioning. So this conditioning is going to help you understand the mechanic of how to get into an aerial invert on spinning mode. Now let's try spinning forward in this particular one. So you're coming into a spinning climb. Now once you come into your spinning climb, you're going to make sure that you have a little bit of space between yourself and your stomach. Then you're swinging your inside leg around, so whichever hand that is on the bottom, so your inside hand on the bottom, outside hand on top. You're swinging your inside leg around, hit your hip so that your tailbone is on the pole and coming into a corkscrew position. Now, when you're coming into a corkscrew, first things first, and make sure that you're not dropping your body too far low until your arms are extended. I want you to make sure that when you're pulling, both of your hands are still next to your cheek. Now, initially when you do this, you might not have the strength to be able to hold up, and that is totally fine. Remember that it is all about conditioning and then trying to understand the mechanic of the invert. So we're coming into a spinning climb. Remember, outside hand on top, inside hand on the bottom. You're going to swing your inside leg around, pull up, get it into your armpit, into your corkscrew. To come out, get your legs together, turning towards the pole, and stepping down. Well done. Now let's try that on the other side. Now just keep in mind before we do the other side that you get that bicep hold really firmly. So remember that your inside hand is on the pole and your inside bicep is on the pole. So use this bicep hold to pull yourself in and then slide it into your armpit as you go into your corkscrew. So we're coming into our spinning climb. Remember, outside hand comes on top, press through your inside bicep, swing your hips around, and coming into your corkscrew. To come out, turn yourself back towards the pole and stepping down. Well done. So there's your 2 conditioning done. All right, are you ready to aerial invert with me? Now, we will be going through multiple different entries today, and this is gonna be a stylistic choice. We'll also be going through spinning forward and backwards. And lastly, spinning and static. So I'll show this to you on spinning, but this is what an aerial invert looks like. All right, so let's break down the aerial invert. All right, now first things first, we're gonna start this on a static pole. So we are coming into a static climb. Once you come into your static climb, you're gonna ensure that you have a little bit of space between yourself and your stomach. You're gonna swing your hips around the pole so that your inside glute is on the pole. Now from there, you're going to think about pulling the pole apart so that you are squeezing through your back and keeping your chest neutral. So just try a few of these exercises where you feel the engagement, not just through your back, but also through your chest. And think about pulling the pole apart from each other. Now, as you do so, you're still squeezing through your inside armpit. You're looking up towards the top of the pole. Now, when you're looking towards the top of the pole, make sure that you're still engaging through your neck. So rather than just dangling your neck, you're looking up, tucking your chin in slightly, and you should feel the engagement through the back of your neck. Now, once you get your inside butt on the pole and you've engaged through your arms, that's where you're gonna start tucking your tailbone in, engage through your lower abdominal area, and you're gonna tip back into your aerial invert. Now, initially when you're doing this, you can keep your knees bent. Then if you start feeling comfortable, you can totally do a straight leg. So we're gonna come into a climb. Outside hand on top, inside hand on the bottom. I'm gonna start with my inside armpit, so right hand on the bottom. Then I'm gonna swing my hips around the pole. Inside leg around, hips around. From there, I'm gonna look towards the top of the pole, make sure that my hands are cheek height, bend your knee, tip back, get that oblique onto the pole, and then into your invert. To come out, bend the knees back, and then controlling it down. Well done. Let's try this on the other side, and I'm going to teach you a different entry. Now, on the other side, I'm gonna teach you how to do it from an aerial front hook. So this is the pole's still on static right now, so let's just try it on static. So we're starting with our climb. Once you come into your climb, you're gonna come into your aerial front hook. Now, once you come into your aerial front hook, you're gonna press your hips forward, slide your hands down so that your inside hand is on the bottom, outside hand on top. Make sure that you engage through your core, look up, bend your knees, and then extend into your straddle. To come out, bend your knees back, and controlling it down. Well done. All right, wipe your sweat off if you need to. Now, just remember that if you haven't done this one before, I would highly recommend you to start on static first, because it'll help you understand the mechanic of it. If you start spinning, then you tend to use momentum too much when you spin. So try it on static first, and then now we're gonna try spinning. Alrighty, now that the pole is on spin, let's try our next entry, which is a corkscrew entry into an invert or aerial invert. Now, with this particular entry, I want you to think about leading with your outside knee. So what we're essentially doing is doing a climb again. From there, you're going to swing your inside leg around and bend your outside leg towards the pole as you circle your leg and come into a extension through your straddle. So try this from the floor first so that you can familiarize yourself with the move. So I'm facing directly to the pole as if I'm coming into a climb. From there, your inside leg, so the same leg as the bottom hand, is gonna swing around. Then you're gonna swap your knee. So inside leg around, swap the knee, outside leg circles towards the pole. So remember, lead with your outside knee and then you're gonna circle your leg out. So inside leg circle, outside leg swap, bend your knee towards the pole and circle your leg out into straddle. Now, the reason why we're doing this is because gravity and also the momentum is essentially carrying you into the aerial invert. So we're gonna come into a spinning climb. Outside hand comes on top. You're gonna swing your inside leg around, swap the knee, circle that leg into your invert. And then I'm gonna come out in my corkscrew. Well done. So as you can see, that entry is gonna help you with the flow of the invert, and the momentum kind of carries you straight into the aerial invert, which makes it look really flowy and pretty as well. Well done. So lastly, let's come on to the other side and do a spinning backwards invert. Now, with spinning backwards, once you come into your climb, instead of your outside hand being on top, you're setting yourself so that your inside hand comes on top. Now from there, if your left hand is on top, you're going to aim to get your other armpit onto the pole, into your armpit, and you end up in a spinning backwards invert. So remember that as soon as you have your inside hand on top, when you turn backwards, that same hand is gonna be the outside hand, and then the bottom will be the inside hand. So if you climb with your inside hand on top, you're going to tuck your outside hand underneath, and that will keep everything synchronized. So spinning climb. Catch the pole underneath. You're gonna get into your same hand as your bottom hand armpit. Turn back. Then invert. And stepping down. Well done. So that was a lot of inverts today. So remember that aerial inverts are a very strenuous exercise. So remember to take your time while you learn these, because it takes a bit of time to sometimes understand the mechanic first and for your body to remember it. Well done. Alrighty, now let's go through some tips and common mistakes. Now the first common mistake is the hand position. Now with our hand position, it is very easy to start with your hands really high, to feel like you can pull a lot through your hands. But remember, like, if you keep your hands really high, firstly, it's gonna be really hard for you to pull up, because that's way more height to have to get your hips really high. So remember to keep your hands nice and low. So your outside hand should be around cheek height, inside hand around neck height, in order to achieve that aerial invert. So I'll show you the difference. So let's say if my hands are high here, then that means that when I pull, oh, you can see how much I had to press my hips up. So that is way more strenuous than keeping your hands nice and low. Trust me, I know it's really hard. It feels like you can pull more through your hands above, but just make sure you keep it low so that you don't have to push your hips that high. Now, speaking of the hand grip, another common mistake is your hands wrapping around. Now, firstly, you can see that if I'm wrapping my wrist around, then it's gonna hurt your wrist. So you might feel some sort of wrist pain. But the other thing is you end up sort of hunching your back into this sort of crunched invert. Now, I'm gonna talk shortly about the back and the invert positioning, but if you hunch your back, then you're not really using your front chain anymore, especially your pecs, and your upper back is going to be taking over. Your invert is just gonna be so much harder because your hips drop when you hunch. So remember, keep that posture nice and upright and keep your back neutral, so that when you get into this position, you're not rounding, and you're not rounding your shoulders in as well. Now, let's talk about that spine. Now, if you remember in our conditioning, we spoke about keeping that back flat. Now, the most common mistake with inverts is your back sort of rounding in that invert position. Firstly, it's not as aesthetic, and also when you start working on anything to do with your pecs might be asleep because you're not used to using your pecs. So make sure to keep maintaining that flat back so that you're using every part of your muscle to be able to do that invert. Now, the easiest way to maintain the flat back is remember doing an invert from an ankle grab or your inverted crucifix. So make sure you keep working on that before you try the aerial invert. Now, I think it's always important to really work on your foundations because it's so hard. And I have a lot of higher level pole dancers that come to me and they haven't honed in on the technique earlier. And it makes the pole journey so much harder later on. So make sure that you have your foundations down pat now so that when you start progressing, everything feels natural, you're correcting your posture and your pole journey will be so much more smooth sailing. So again, remember to work on your ankle grab, getting the pole right into that shelf or your oblique, tucking that tailbone in, engaging through the core. Really pull the pole out of the ceiling, then coming into your invert this way. Great. Now, which brings me to my next point of our core and use of the core rather than using the back. Now, what I mean by that is if you tend to be naturally in an anterior pelvic tilt as such, and you're arching constantly and you're not really engaging through the core, this aerial invert, you end up using your back way more than your lower core. So make sure that when you do your inverts, already before you get into position, start tucking your tailbone in and engage your core before you get into your invert, and it'll make your inverting journey way easier and way better as well. Now, if you don't understand the core engagement, I highly recommend you to watch my shoulder mount tutorial because I covered a lot about the core and understanding the mechanic of tucking or using your abs. The other common mistake is not getting your oblique onto the pole. Now, commonly, a lot of people think that the inversion is just the hands, and when you drop down, you're essentially just relying on your hands to invert. That will be very hard, and also it's actually going to be quite hard to keep your back nice and flat. So remember to use your oblique as much as you can because that's another grip point that you can utilize. Again, really working on that correct form and technique from my invert tutorial is going to be very beneficial for getting the aerial invert. So make sure you keep watching that tutorial and really hone in that foundation first. Now, the aerial invert is executed in such diverse ways, and that's what I love about pole as well. But I want us to try different styles of legs today with our aerial inverts, now that we've tried multiple different versions of entries. So our first one is our straight leg inverts, where your legs are nice and straight, everything is just very symmetrical and very clean. Now, in order to do this, you're going to do a pencil pull-up. And remember that stylistic choice is totally up to you and what you want to achieve in pole. So in order to do your straight leg, you're going to pull up, do a pencil spin, get the pole into your armpit, then into your invert. So this is much clean cut. If you like that gymnastic style pole, then you might like this entry. Now, the second option is the swirly legs. So if you remember when we did our invert just before, we swapped the leg, bent the leg, and then did our invert. Now, with the swirly legs, you can start rotating your knees internally, bend the leg, and then circle the leg externally. So you can see that my knee's internally rotated, bend, turn that knee out, then extend. So this is another entry or a little bit of zhuzh if you want to add that extra flair to your invert. So you're going to turn your knee in, into your invert. Now, I know that this leg is quite difficult, so remember to try this from the floor first. You can always come down onto the floor, turn your knee in, and then try this from the floor. One last tip I have for you with the spinning backwards invert is remember to tip back and use that outside leg to guide your body. The most common mistake with the spinning backwards invert is that you're not letting your body lean towards the direction of the spin. So remember, if you're spinning backwards, the more you turn towards that spin, the easier it is to navigate yourself through into that backward spinning invert. So if I'm gonna be spinning anti-clockwise, I'm gonna turn anti-clockwise. So turn back and use that outside leg to hitch that hip up. So let's say, for example, I am here. I'm gonna lean towards that spin, lean, bend that leg, then extend. So that is all your tips and common mistakes. Now, a little training tip I have for you today is working on your foundations. Now, I know that foundations and also conditioning is so boring at times, and I totally get that. However, from my experience of years of pole and also figure skating, the one thing I wish I knew earlier in my pole journey was to work on really solid foundations. And although, working on executions and lines and everything, it could be boring, remember that if you have a really solid foundation, the rest of your pole journey is going to be so much more smooth sailing than trying to just get that next big trick. Now, I really see this very commonly in my higher level classes, where people just are always in a rush to get that next shiny object, which is the trick. Now, when you do that, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you've neglected your foundations, it might be even harder for you to get that next trick. And this is exactly the reason why I've structured the intermediate and also beginner pole trick tutorial series to make it cohesive and all in order. So when I say that the playlist is in order, there's a reason for it. And this is gonna really help you with your progress in pole. So make sure that if you have skipped some of the videos or some of the tutorials, I highly recommend you to go back to it because they are going to be helpful to build a lot of the foundation moves to come next. Thank you so much for joining me in the aerial invert tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and I shall see you in the very next tutorial. Bye! Yes? What's up, sweet peachy? What's up? Yes, you are. What's up? I know. Hi, sweetie. Did you have a good nap? Having a good day? Yes. Yes.